just just have the fun, speak the thing. You project on your body. Twice. If you can hear me say, ooh. OMG, hello everybody. My name is Anthony Febo. I am the Poetry Coalition Fellow from Mass Poetry. This is my daughter. Her name is Luna. She didn't want to leave my side and said, let's come up and let's do it together, all right? I have the absolute pleasure of introducing our opening act tonight. A couple of hours ago, we just had our first youth poetry slam called That's My Fam Youth Poetry Slam. Give it up for youth voices real quick. Yes, yes, excellent. We had some young people from across the state come through. They did, they battled each other, but all in love, and they supported each other with love. And we had one team come out victorious, and we're gonna have this team come up and do 2 poems for you today. Is that okay? Yeah? Excellent. They are going to project from their hearts. So if you need a little bit more of assistance, just go ahead and lean in. Give yourself one of these real fast, all right? And then we should be good. Coming up next is a couple of young people from Newburyport High School. They have an ongoing youth poetry open mic that happens monthly, it feels like, if not weekly. It just feels that way, and I'm very excited to bring them up to the stage. Let's give it up nice and loud for Swans with the C, y'all. Let's go, let's go. Excellent. Rock that, rock that. 1 poem and then 4. Let's go.
This does not belong to you. I'm adding that phrase to the list of things I'm learning to say to give myself power and let me feel like me again. Alongside, mama didn't raise no bitch, fuck it, we ball, and I love you. It doesn't seem right that it would be so hard to say so few words, but I know it's true. Every time I choke up trying to admit I have a problem, trying to tell someone what they mean to me, trying to explain that my hesitation to declare my dedication is not their fault, it's mine. Wait, it isn't my fault. There's another one. It isn't my fault that those 3 little words hold great power but have not been used responsibly. Given to me in abundance when I know the words are empty, held back to keep me in my place. Trust in myself turned to dust after years of questionable decisions, less than perfect judgment, infinite mistakes. I never wanted to end up the way I did, a ceramic girl, hairline fractures in my stone-cold composure, exposing the way soured love had rotted me from the inside out. I'm learning to wet my hands, collect the dust and mold the dry, cracked clay into something unbreakable. When the doubts creep back in, I treat myself with compassion. I don't have an inner child to heal. I have an inner dragon. She is fiercely protective of me. This is her treasure. Since I have let her out of her cage, she has kept me safe and brave. She breathes fire into my lungs and gives me the courage to say, this does not belong to you. This belongs to me. One affirmation at a time, I will teach myself that my wings are not made of wax, and my heart is not made of glass. And those 3 little words really aren't so scary. My friends know they're true, and they love me too.
I'm 6 years old. What matters most is my swing set in the backyard, or perhaps my unicorn drawing my mother stuck to the fridge. What matters is my favorite TV show on at 6:30, but instead of Curious George, it's a news story. I'm watching kids who look even younger than I am being escorted out of a classroom that was full of unicorn drawings like my own. I'm wondering if the man being taken to a cop car is someone who will come to my classroom next. I'm 6 years old, practicing active shooter drills in the middle of math.
I am 16 years old. What matters most to me is walking to my favorite literature class, a new book in my hands, a story that reflects who I am, who my friends are, and the world around us. But the thought of banning books is dark and heavy. The doors of my imagination are being shut by senators who will never understand that the library is the most liberating place I'll ever know. My freedom is burning along with the pages. I am 16 years old, watching words become weapons.
I am 36 years old. What matters most is a universe away from what mattered 5 minutes ago. I lived in a humble house. Neighbors helped each other out. Until defaults paved way for developers. Our neighborhood gave way to gentrification. What matters now is the cart at the checkout, the numbers on the screen filling me with doubt, wondering if the change in my pocket should be spent on an apple or saved for my monthly pharmacy visit. The receipt seems longer than my post-college career.
I am 36 years old.
Hoping my paycheck is enough to prove my worth.
I am 86 years old.
What matters most lies across from me, asleep on the bed. What matters is that she lives to our granddaughter's birth. Hearing politicians whose taxes are unpaid suggesting cuts to my Medicaid, breaking penny jars we'd saved to pay for medical bills. I only dream that we can pass on our home and not our debt. When I thought the government would lend a hand after so much time, after so many years of working past my prime, the ground collapsed beneath my cane.
I am 86 years old.
Looking back on a life half-lived and a legacy unsteady.
We stand here now, and what matters most is not living in the wrong place.
Not loving in the wrong place.
And not dying in the wrong place.
While we ask for crayons,
A story,
An apple.
A piggy bank.
joy,
choice.
Security.
Dignity.
We raise our fists at the gates of a government we no longer have faith in.
Our leaders tell us that basic human rights are a political issue.
That we're greedy when we only ask for the liberty we deserve.
but we are the people struggling to find the America that we were promised.
Hello. Wow, that's very loud. I'm very happy to introduce Matthew Olzmann. Matthew Olzmann is the author of 3 books of poetry from Alice Jane's books, including Mezzanines, Contradictions in Design, and most recently, Constellation Route. He has received fellowships from the Breadloaf Writers Conference, McDowell, and others. He currently teaches at Dartmouth College and the Warren Wilson MFA program. Constellation Roots is a collection of epistolary poems written both from and occasionally to one Matthew Olzmann. Who is addressed? Well, actually, who isn't? There's a letter to the Connecticut River monster, a letter to a car radiator, and one to a dead cockroach mixed into a bar of chocolate. And Olzmann himself is addressed in his poems by such as A Flying Saucer, A Traffic Light in Durham, North Carolina, and the Roman Empire. There are also poems that address poet friends or poems that friends wrote to him. Throughout the collection, the poems exhibit what Gregory Parlow calls a sublimely playful imagination, a mind that is in love with language, yet also expresses a hunger for connection. And they recognize that language is a thing that can both connect us and mark our isolation. What good fortune it is to have Matthew Olzmann here with us tonight. Please, let's welcome him to the stage.
good place to hide a star is a galaxy. A good place to hide a galaxy is a universe. Look at the night sky. Justice used to be a cowl and cape, the flicker of wings under an anteliated moon, and you, like a gargoyle, crouched atop some stone edifice. To conceal a universe, place it in a multiverse, that hypothetical flash of alternate realities. The dilemma of the word alternate is how it implies a norm, a progenitor stream from which the alternate diverges. Which is the alternate? Which is right here, right now. There is no such thing as Gotham City, but here is Gotham City, and I have been so naive, believing the truth of the old mythologies, how they promised me a recognizable villain, a clown with a ruby-slashed mouth, a lunatic's laugh. But in the universe where I exist, supervillains look like anyone else. Give them an old flannel to wear and a square jawline to smile at the world, and suddenly they're hanging a noose in my middle school bathroom. They're shouting, "Get out of my country," from the window of a passing car. They're pulling a pistol in a crowded bar room or bus stop in the middle of the street. They could be everyone. They could be everywhere. A good place to hide a sociopath is a full-length mirror. A good place to hide that mirror is the middle of America. In the battle of good versus evil, I was so certain good would win. Now I just hope something good will survive. Get a job cutting hair or selling cars and make it home in time for dinner. I suspect there's a parallel dimension where you, vigilante, long for this as well. To live a normal life is victory enough. To remain anonymous and not be spat upon on the subway. In Boston, Bruce Wayne owns a pawn shop. In Milwaukee, he plays pinochle and beats stray cats. In New Hampshire, he goes fly fishing on the Sugar River. Reels in one brook trout after another. When he removes the hook from a mouth, he might place that fish into a cooler, or he might set it back into a stream, the alternate or the original, no longer certain in which he stands. Letter to someone living 50 years from now. Most likely, you think we hated the elephant, the golden toad, the thylacine, and all variations of whale, harpooned or hacked into extinction. It must seem like we sought to leave you nothing but benzene, mercury, the stomachs of seagulls rippled with jet fuel and plastic. You probably doubt we were capable of joy, but I assure you we were. We still had the night sky back then. And like our ancestors, we admired its illuminated doodles of scorpion outlines and upside-down ladles. Absolutely, there were some forests left. Absolutely, we still had some lakes then. I'm saying it wasn't all lead paint and sulfur dioxide. There were bees back then, and they pollinated a euphoria of flowers so that we might contemplate the great mysteries and finally ask questions like, "Hey guys, what's transcendence?" And then all the bees were dead. This is the previously mentioned letter to a cockroach now dead and mixed into a bar of chocolate. Regulations allow for, on average, up to, quote, 60 insect fragments per 100 grams of chocolate in America. You are pulverized. Thorax, head, legs that no longer twitch, all invisible and milk smooth. Nothing harbors a secret like sweetness. Centuries ago on the open sea, the sirens might have understood this statue. Each sank their knowledge inside a voice of chimes and kisses, hiding the ocean's stone teeth in a mouth of mist and foam. Last week, waves beat against a dock in Brazil. The quick bodies of you and your buddies quivered across the cargo of cocoa beans. You couldn't possibly comprehend the beans on their way to the grinder, just as those ancient sailors couldn't envision beyond the siren's music, the broken mast, the shattered hull. Today is Valentine's Day. I walk to the store to buy a box of chocolates for my wife. As I walk, I have no idea whose hands made these shoes that hug my feet, or why the fruit at the supermarket glows like numbers on the stock exchange. There is sweetness in this world, but it has a price. You are the price. waiting in line at Comic-Con. Klingon, Parseltongue, Navi. People invent imaginary languages, so imaginary citizens of imaginary worlds can speak to one another. Elvish, Ewokese, Dothraki. You can learn these languages. Come to a convention with your face painted blue or a leather scabbard bolted to your back and talk to people who will understand you. I understand what language feels like when you're not understood. More than once, I thought some other planet might be my home. Like last week, in an alley, I saw one man punch another man until neither looked like a person anymore. There are hundreds of reasons like this. To yearn to be from some other galaxy, century, or dimension. To put on a spacesuit or a wizard's cloak and hope no one will recognize you. But it's not these costumes that amaze me. It's always been the languages, the way they reach for something that can't be said in our tongue. In the only language I know, there are not enough words for parabola or isotope, too few phrases to say I'm sorry or I'm glad that I found you. Though we've been married for years, I wish we met when we were children. If we had known each other in the year you spent alone on Earth without one friend, we could have been aliens together. I'd have those green four-fingered hands, you with your glow-in-the-dark antennae, words in the form of strange whirling noises, low chirping machine music, wisps of static, lamentations of rain. Only you and I would know what these sounds meant. Most of the poems in here are letters, or in the form of letters, or pretending to be letters, and those that aren't are sort of about post offices in some way. This poem is called Conversion, and that's and the definition comes from the United States Postal Service glossary of postal terms, which I often read for fun. So conversion is a change in an employee's status or tenure from one category of employment to another, such as part-time to full-time or non-career to career. Conversion. A cell divides, and 100 million years later, it's a bull shark or Sophocles. Not sure which, not sure how these things work. The point is, things change, evolve, move forward. You get the job, get promoted, get fired. Lead becomes gold, then one day it doesn't. The sun orbits the earth, then one day it doesn't. The whale gets legs, gets bored with land, goes back to the ocean. The legs are now just a metaphor. Nothing certain, nothing written in stone that can't be unwritten by the hammer. The world keeps trying to end itself because it wants to end, then one day it doesn't. You get homesick, get heartburn, get a strange yearning to pray when looking at old photographs or cell phone towers. You have a hard time adjusting to your new status, station, or impending fate. You believe one thing, that now you believe something else. The earth has ice caps, then one day it doesn't. Everything converted to a newer thing. Meanwhile, the old gods become lesser gods, become priests leaving offerings on someone else's altar. The god of war grows up to sell pocket knives at a pawn shop. The goddess of carrots peddles sinus medications. The messenger god now brings your mail. And there he is, right on schedule, one house to the next. This always stuns me, the way an envelope arrives, how we still reach toward one another, how this correspondence endures. One figure approaches your door with a satchel full of sand, pigeon fingers, pigeon feathers, sorrows, and names. So I'm going to read a few poems from other newer projects. Best Nightmare Machine. Whenever I got too many peaceful nights of sleep, whenever the vice grip of anxiety failed to apply the proper pressure to my skull, I could type something like, image of a brown recluse spider bite, or how much of Antarctica is already melted, into the search engine, and that network of teeth would take care of the rest. Whenever the season was too bright, whenever my table too bountiful, I could count on my trusty nightmare machine to produce a door in the sky or earth and release one hairless wolf, starving and strange, to hunt me down, tear off one of my arms, and whisper something like, "You know, Ron DeSantis could be your next president." And immediately, my nerves would light up with catastrophe and inescapability. But it doesn't work like that anymore. Technology has evolved. The sophistication of my dread has evolved. Today, the best nightmare machines understand the fundamental necessity of delight, the importance of good fortune. They now try to make you cherish, at least a little, the world before they introduce its demise. Now, they only send photographs of only my favorite days. You and I walking through the rain in Vancouver. You and I listening to that folk singer at Salvador Deli in Hamtramck. You and I at Avalon Bakery with only $3 and a blueberry muffin to share. And only now does my life end a little when I hear the outcry of a car slamming its brakes. When you go in for a routine checkup, only now do I pace the living room until you return. This is the best nightmare machine's most delicate victory, allowing me to revel in every moment together, every sip of this mulled cider, every bite of this pear, the dishes stacked precariously in the sink. I'll get to those tomorrow, I promise, but even those I savor. They remind me of previous joys, how they pile up, their awkward leaning, their threat to fall. I don't know if I'm talking really fast right now, but I was given a certain amount of time, and I'm like looking at my stopwatch, there's so much time left. Those poems should have taken longer to read. First foray into apophatic theology. And then, God is not like the sound the kindling makes as it meets the match head, not like the buoy in the bay invisible at night, not like gravity calling to the pair on the bow above the field, nor the beam from which the boy you knew roped a knot to his neck to yoke this life to the next, if there is a next, and if not, then to nothingness. God is not like nothingness. If God transcends all, then God transcends language. If God transcends language, we cannot deploy language to particularize what God is. If we cannot articulate what God is, we can only announce what God is not. This is how I approach the divine. I study the corona that circles the eclipse, which I've been told not to look at. Still, there's some elegance in the bright blur of pain behind my eyes, and so, unable to see the center, I outline the mystery's border, like making chalk silhouettes of a body at a murder investigation, a technique no detective actually uses as it contaminates the evidence. God is not the evidence, not the residue, the shell casings, the blood pattern, or the partial fingerprint, not the container or the object emptied. I'm not saying God is the negation. I'm saying the crime scene has been compromised. I'm the one who compromised it. All right, I'm going to read 3 more poems, and no matter how much time is left on my stopwatch, that's all I'm going to do. My invisible horse in the speed of human decency. People always tell me, don't put the cart before the horse, which is curious because I don't have a horse. Is this some new advancement in public shaming? Repeatedly drawing one's attention to that which one is currently not and never has been in possession of? If ever I happen to obtain a Clydesdale, then I'll align absolutely it to its proper position in relation to the cart. But I can't do that because all I have is the cart, my solitary cart, a little grief wagon that goes precisely nowhere, along with, apparently, one invisible invisible horse, which does not pull, does not haul, does not in any fashion budge, impel, or tow my disaster buggy up the hill or down the road. I'm not asking for much. A more tender world with less hatred strutting through the streets, perhaps a downtick in state-sanctioned violence against civilians, winds through the trees, water under the bridge, kindness. LOL, says the world. These things take time, says the Office of Disappointment. Change cannot be rushed, says the round table of my smartest friends. And then together they all say, the cart. They say, the horse. They say, haven't we told you this already? And so my invisible horse remains standing where it previously stood, between hot dog stands and hallelujahs, between the NASDAQ and the moon's a dumb world visage, between the status quo and the great filter, and I can see that it's not my horse's fault, being invisible and not existing. How he's the product of both my imagination and the greater good's failure of imagination. Watch how I press my hand into his translucent flank, how I hold 2 sugar cubes to his hypothetical mouth, how I say I want to believe in him, speaking softly into his missing ear. So I've been writing a lot of wedding poems lately, and because I was asked to read a poem at a friend's wedding, and I was asked to read a poem at my sister's wedding, which I still have to write. And most of my attempts at this haven't worked out well, but this is one of them that came from that process. This is an epithalamium that refuses to ignore the possibility of a zombie apocalypse. Let's be honest. What each of us wants is to never get eaten by zombies, and the shotgun-shaped truth of the matter is we're less likely to be ravaged by the ravenous appetites of the dead if someone just loves us. We each need a partner posted on the roof, someone with a crossbow watching the high cornfield for signs of movement. There needs to be someone willing to brave the basement during the power outage, someone to descend the midnight staircase to repair the generator. We need a reserve supply of bandages, fragmentation grenades, and flamethrowers, just in case the whole grid goes down. I'm afraid of dying alone, and I imagine I'm not alone in that fear. Those of us who've known sorrow know that the world is populated by those who will respond to our outstretched arms by eating our outstretched arms. The God-honest miracle we celebrate today is these gentle and soon-to-be betrothed friends of ours have found in each other a companion willing to declare in public, I promise to never eat your extremities, kidneys, or brains, and furthermore, I vow to protect you from those who would. We call this commitment marriage, and there's no greater honor than to say, even when humanity withers around us, I will guard the humanity that stirs, restless and delicate, like a fawn in a field of trillium in you. If the lights in the city go dark, if the highway falls silent, if every radio fills with static, if you are surrounded by flesh-eating foulness and running low on ammo, I will love you like an unmarked helicopter flying into the horizon. I will hover over you, and with my machine gunners struggling to hold the danger back, I will lower the rope ladder to meet you. Thanks everyone for being here and for listening to these, and I want to thank everyone involved with this poetry festival for inviting me and for making it such a great event. And it's especially a treat to be reading with Kimiko, who I was trying to figure out how long we've known each other, and I think we first met in 2011 when I was in my final year at as a fellow at the Kundiman Retreat for Asian American Writers, and she had been assigned to be my faculty mentor that week. This is a commencement speech delivered to a herd of walrus calves. Young walruses, we all must adapt. For example, some of your ancestors gouged their way through the world with 4 tusks, but now you can grow only 2. It's hard to say what evolution plans for your kind, but if you're given a choice, you should put in a request for thumbs. Anyway, congratulations. You're entering a world that's increasingly increasingly hostile and cruel and full of people that will never take you seriously, though that will be a mistake on their end. You are more tenacious than they know. You'll be a fierce and loyal defender of those you love. You will fight polar bears when they attack your friends, and sometimes you will win. Of course, odds always favor the polar bear. But that's not the point. The point is courage. The point is bravery. The point is you are all fighters even when the fight in which you find yourself ensures unpleasant things will happen to you. For example, the bear is going to gnaw apart your skull or neck until you stop that persistent twitching. It will eat your skin, all of it, then blubber, then muscle, then the tears of your loved ones, in that order. It will savor every bite, and you will just suffer until the emptiness can wash over you. The good news is things change. For example, the environment. Climate change is indeed very bad for you, but it's much worse for the polar bear, whose conservation status is now listed as vulnerable, which is one step removed from endangered, which is one step removed from extinct, which is a synonym for hooray, none of you are getting eaten. I suppose this will make some people sad. Even now they're posting pictures of disconsolate polar bear cubs on melting ice floes drifting toward their well-deserved oblivion. They say, we need to stop this. They say, we need to do something now. These people are not your friends. One cannot be on both Team Walrus and Team Polar Bear at the same time. I'm not saying these people are evil. I'm saying it's time to choose a side. I'm saying sharpen your tusks, young calves. Your enemies are devious. You need to train yourself to do what they won't expect. For example, use computers, invest in renewable energies, reinstating a pervert. Unrelatedly, your whiskers make you appear to have mustaches, which, seeing as you're not even toddlers yet, kind of freaks me out. Babies that look like grown men are remarkably unsettling to me. Like in those medieval paintings by so-called masters where they make the face of little baby Jesus look like an ancient constipated dunker. That's what God really looks like. It's no wonder we've done what we've done to the earth. Maybe you can repair what we spent lifetimes taking apart. Replace some screws, oil some hinges. This might sound impossible, but have you ever looked at yourself seriously? Take a quick look at a walrus face and tell me how that's possible. Everything about it defies the laws of physics. You will exist beyond the reach of nature. You'll learn to slow your own heartbeat to preserve oxygen while diving to depths over 900 feet. You'll stay awake for up to 3 consecutive days while swimming on the open sea. And when the ocean is too rough, so terrible with longing, so ruptured with heartache, you'll find a small island of stone or ice offering refuge. It will be difficult to climb from these waters, but because there's hope for us all, you will hoist yourself up using only your front teeth and the muscles in your face to drag your body onto the shore.
You know you're doing okay when people are reacting before you've even finished reading the title. Can we hear it one more time from Matthew Olzmann? Next up, I'm honored to introduce Kimiko Hahn. After Kimiko reads, we'll have both our poets in conversation with Jennifer Hahn, poet, translator, and educator. Jennifer is the author of 3 collections, most recently Vogue. She also directs 24 Pearl Street, the online writers program of tonight's sponsor, the Fine Arts Work Center. Yeah, let's hear it for the Fine Arts Work Center. Thank you. Kimiko Hahn is the author of 10 books of poems, including Foreign Bodies, Brain Fever, and Toxic Flora, all collections prompted by science. Hahn's honors include a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Penn Volcker Award, a Shelley Memorial Prize, a Leila Wallace Reader's Digest Writers Award, as well as fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York Foundation for the Arts. She has taught in graduate programs at the University of Houston and New York University, and has also taught for literary organizations such as the Fine Arts Work Center, Cave Canem, and Kundiman. From 2016 to 2019, Hahn was president of the Board of Governors, Poetry Society of America. In 2023, she was named a Chancellor for the Academy of American Poets, an honor much deserved. Hahn takes pleasure in the challenges of collaboration. From producing a chapbook with Kimiko Bayer, Dovetail, to writing text for film including Cold Fields, the 1985 experimental documentary by Bill Brand, Ain't Nothing But a Sheep Thing, a 1995 HBO special, and Everywhere at Once, a 2008 film based on Peter Lindbergh's still photos and narrated by Jean Moreau. Hahn's work incorporates Japanese aesthetics, particularly ideas of play, pivot, and juxtaposition. The poems in Foreign Bodies, which often echo Japanese forms, are inspired by her encounter with the ingested curiosities at Philadelphia's Mutter Museum and lead to an exploration of the detritus of the family house. In the poems, one senses an alertness to possibilities. No line is predetermined, no ending predictable. Hahn writes that her aim is to move readers by having them experience odd shifts in awareness. In Nitro, an essay on Japanese poetics included at the end of Foreign Bodies, Hahn writes, I want arousal. I want to place the craft of poetry back where it belongs. That is, not just party to the mind, but a thing coursing through the body, riotous and iambic, other times faint. The Massachusetts Poetry Festival is honored. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone at Massachusetts Mass Poetry, love that mass part, and also Fine Arts Work Center, and very dear thanks to Matthew. Very dear thanks. As you were finishing, I was thinking, maybe I should read different poems. But no, I'm just going to stick to what I put together. Otherwise, I'll be scrolling up and down. And thank you in advance to Jennifer Jean. We're going to have fun, I think. Yeah, actually, Matthew's poems are, for me, the rare kind of contemporary poems that when I hear, I think, how did he do that? You know, how did he do that? Well, first I just laugh. I'm moved. Sometimes I don't laugh, not because they're not funny, but maybe because they're not meant to be funny. They're just these wonderful poems. But then I think, how do you do that? So, thank you for that. I'm going to read first some poems from my latest book, Foreign Bodies. And because we're in Salem, I'm going to begin with 3 charms. Nip in the bud. Pull out a Queen Anne's lace by every gnarled tendril to hone your skill at tatting as well as thwart a rival. Reprisal. If a sweetheart aims to stray foreign neighbor's tryst. Secure means to shake nettles on her sheets. Sympathy. When you spy a horseshoe crab flipped over on the shore, write it gently in the tide, and with your kin a true rapport. The title for my book, Foreign Bodies, comes from, actually, MP was just mentioning this doctor who invented an endoscope, and I would really just love to talk about him for an hour. But anyway, he took out over 2,000 objects from children's upper respiratory system, and those are called foreign bodies. And you could see all 2,000 of them in the Motor Museum. But then, after I wrote that, I wrote a long poem about him. I realized foreign bodies and the idea that my grandmother had kind of a foreign body. We are still debating today people coming from other countries with their foreign bodies. So I began to write other poems that addressed that play on words. Foreign body. This is a poem on my other's body. I mean, my mother's body. I mean the one who saved her braid of blue-black hair in a drawer. I mean the one I could lean against, as in insistence. Fuzzy dress of wuzzy one, red lipstick one, rubber gloves one, her one to me, badger, or so I heard. The one body I write on, her sun-flecked body, as she bathed in the afternoon. Was I 5? It was summer, then winter, where today I call the unlocked bathroom to mind. I cannot leave her body alone, which is how I found Mother escaping the heat of a 1950s house. Father on a ladder with a blowtorch to scrape the paint off the outside. Badger. The sun in those suburbs simmered the tar roof over our rooms in the town where the wasps lived, inside paper cells beneath eaves and roofs. They sting very much, the wasps. Now I'm 60, sweet as dried papaya, my hair a bit tarnished, my inmost null memory is falling away, as if an image shattered to shards, then recollected for a kaleidoscope. I click the pieces into sharp arrangement. Bad, girl. In turn, a daughter turns sovereign. So, I'm not quite sure what happens to the body after death, what happens to us, what happens to us after death. And I remember walking in New York City, where I live. This was a number of years ago, and I saw an old man who lived in a building that I had once lived in. He was standing outside an OTV, old Chinese guy, and went up to him and he said, "Hi, how are you?" And we talked, and he immediately said, "My wife went home." And I thought, he doesn't mean China, and then I realized that she had died, to say, "My wife went home." And that was so meaningful for me to think about. Another time, a student had a friend who died very suddenly, and he said, "I don't know where he is, but someday I'll be with him." And I thought, yeah. And so I started thinking about dust, and how someday I will be dust with my mother. A dusting. However, Mother has reappeared, say, as motes on a feather duster. Scientists say the galaxy was created thus. This daybreak, she sees a cumulus cloud. Wherever mother is bound, she's joined ashes, or dirt underfoot, or bits of Tower North and Tower South. Repurpose does not arrive whole cloth. From stardust, dust bunnies, dust bowl, dust unto dust, Whitman's boot soles in his leaves of grass, and Dunbar's, what of his love, what of his lust, to samples that astronomers collect, dust is where the sparrow bathes herself. Not a cloud in the sky, mother says as she hangs the laundry outside. Father paints en plein air, and we girls sweep crumbs under the rug. This summer, father sees inferno everywhere. No dust-ups from little girls. As a consequence, one scribbled on the dustbins of history, and the other dusted for fingerprints. And the mother? The mother lived in a vacuum. Inside the senseless corridors, the daughter cannot respire. Inside the vulgar cosmic, the mother cannot be revived in streaming wet traffic. Nowadays, I lie down in the sunlight to see my mama moting around as sympathetic ash. Yes, one morning, whether misty or yellow, I'll be soot with her, elegiac and original. Many of my poems are based on science. My previous two books, and a little bit foreign bodies also. And many of them were prompted by the science section of the New York Times. Hatchlings. Though tough to experiment on a crocodile in the wild, laboratory research has yielded that prior to hatching, the little ones begin to coo. Why? To signal to the mama, start digging, to cue siblings to coo for a synchronous emergence, or perhaps to practice whittling for pastime or coddle, or to rehearse menace that even a crocodile must acquire. Maybe, though, cooing is fun. How to research what transpires in the head of a hatchling before it is hatched, and why we need to know might very well be an intimacy not to trespass. What I really want to do is read some very new poems that I haven't been able to read to people, certainly as I was writing them and revising them during the pandemic and on. Most of the poems, I'm working on a new collection called The Ghost Forest, and most of these new poems are forms, or started out with traditional requirements, then became the ghost of that given form as lines fell off or revised. So I have forms and then kind of forms. This one is a short one that is a triolet. A riotous disorder. She mistakes one word for another, something her brain naturally concocts. Her unruly gray matter and her heart mistakes one word for another, razor for river, cistern for sister, even cock for clock. She mistakes one word for a mother, a safe her brain naturally Sestinas are really, really hard to write. I have been trying to write one for 20 years, on and off. You know, I try, and then 10 years would go by, and I try again. And, finally, I think I got the right 6 words. And then also, I stopped trying to think too hard. So I wrote a bunch. This is one, and the repeating words are daughter, ship, right, left, safe, and whale. To be a daughter and to have a daughter can forecast at odds relationships, especially when the mother hazards to write on her own hours, O-U-R-S, what time's left while keeping the baby safe from herself as she and the baby wail, one in the crib, the other on the floor to wail with the vacuum cleaner so the daughter can't hear mama drowning. So the new relationship isn't all arithmetic and geometry, all right angles, barely connecting. What is left at dusk, still tender and safe, you couldn't pluck and lock in a safe, not unlike a girl calf and her mama whale. 2 generations of reaching daughters, applauded by tourists on a ship, but more likely, if they are the right whales, or what species are left of those docile equatorial pods, never left by men hunting their fat. They are not safe. Larger than grays, smaller than blue whales, mother and son or daughter, in their year-long relationship, are so buoyant that whalers call them the right whale to hunt. Funny, given the mariner's right to trick a man to think he'd been left for the sharks without the safety of pity or prayer. Then that whaler would wail for his own mother, wife, or daughter. When it comes to daughter-mother relationships, I've written on both till there's nothing left, without reaching safety, without wailing. After all, I love daughters and I love ships. The calculation of nothing. When it comes to counting and the honeybee, who knew that the creature knew nothing? That is, the very idea of none. Not a small thing when it comes to 0. Only primates and one bird have passed the test that even some civilizations could not picture. The Inca, though, used a system of knots to store their numbers. Ought could be as much a position as a hunger if a new crop, let's say, amounted to none. Honeybees get nothing too, but what does knowing mean? Past research shows that as stars cycled past, cosmologists and philosophers could not agree on nothing. Agreement to a bee matters little. That's nothing new, like ancient climate change, where no one survived unless invited onto the ark in 2s, though some rascals should have been counted too, should have been passed over. I myself know the 8 sailor knots. I wish I just could be counted like a bee, darting, then resting in the dark for renewal. Or like Siddhartha under a banyan, I could sit until one with none, anonymous as an arithmetical creature, too. Just sing and sit together as an era's past, as when Incas fingered quipu knots, as when an empty pistol meant a bee would seek nectar blossoming anew. Tiny workers knew when to quit and when to flit. I know what's opinion and what makes bee and woman. We too have come to count on hives and buzz past the knowledge of not. This world is a naughty place for being Yes, I always knew how calculating a queen bee can be to win surplus pastures. Further, not a one can doubt my own zeroing in. A ghost forest is let me go back. So as the tides rise, and polar bears are threatened, as tides rise, oftentimes the coastal waters move up onto land, and if they go far enough, they seep into freshwater marshes. And the natural trees there die because of the salt water. That's where the title Ghost Forest comes from. And I have two poems dealing with ghost forests. I'm going to read one which is actually an erasure of a New York Times article I read. So an erasure, I've just chosen words from that article. Erasing the ghost forest. The young predict intensified spells and the synergy of fire and salt. Just a few evoke graveyards. Sawgrass and black needle rush were a clue to where fires travel on top of standing water. If you're lucky, velvety tufts of cordgrass sprout into alligator or princess. The menaces are an invisible flood. Gendon has learned to read forest. Gendon has learned to read salt. Gendon has learned to read marsh. More intense spells conjure the migrating marsh as a window into the rest of the world. The Earth's Day. Grain and water keep us alive. Like plants, we drink the sunlight, then ballad and lullaby. With animals, we're coincident. Plants sip up the sunlight, the clouds drink from rivers. With animals coincident, the rivers drink from storms. When clouds drink from rivers, the children drink their mama's milk. The rivers drink from forlorn, the mamas from the stars. The children from their mama. Mama's milk is light and tempest. The mamas drink from stars. The stars drink from where mama's milk is light and temporal, just as grain and water keep us alive. The stars drink from where a ballad bids goodbye. I'm going to read a few more new poems. So, as I said, a lot of these poems are in forms, and a lot of them, in one way or another, engage with other writers. So there's a form called the Golden Shuttle, which was invented by the wonderful poet Terence Hayes. And I won't go into a lecture, although it would be very worthwhile. But every end word, you take a poem you love, and you take every one of those words and make it the end word of the poem. So you can read the poem by reading down the end of each line. So I wanted to do that, but it's hard. So I took haiku. This is called, and I'm going to read my golden shovel, and then I'll read the haiku. Blossoming purple, after Richard Wright. To think of a girl as blossoming is to consider purple as spiraling wind, a bud forgotten, even an artichoke, if only to safekeep. In time, the daughter becomes a granddaughter, opening in the dark of a mind's cupboard. Haiku. Blossoming purple, a forgotten artichoke, in a dark cupboard. By Richard Wright. Inside my body, after Tada Chimako. Though unseeable, we assume the inside, tissue, blood, and bone appear in my mind, the piss and shit before the body evacuates. But also lodged is one's death in some form, unless expiring is random, like my mother's, a crashing metal against metal, her soft self crushed on that wintry parkway. Did the paramedic notice her wart? Haiku by Tada Chimako. Inside my body, death is a soft, wintry wart. I'm going to end with another whale poem, and this is using a haiku by Yosa Buson, The Whale Already. What is endangered, the rest of us ignore. The whale, loved by children and cartoonists, already dwindles. Bycatch taken them. The tiny creatures they consume haven't got a chance to outlast the warming. A way to safeguard whales is to deny ourselves the car and its exhaust. The moon sees us at all cost alone. Haiku by Yosa Buson. The whale already taken got away. The moon alone. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. Okay, first of all, I just want to say I'm so happy to be back here. I know all of you are. Who here has been to a past Mass Poetry Festival? Ooh, lots of people. Isn't it great to be back? Yes. It can't be said enough, I think. So as MP said, my name is Jennifer Jean, and I work at the Fine Arts Work Center. I am the program manager of 24 Pearl Street, which is the online writing program there. And I want to, before we start, invite all of you to check us out online, FOC.org, and especially check out 24 Pearl Street. And one way that you can do that is to attend our upcoming free online reading, which is on June 1st at 6 p.m. And I think one of the readers might even be in the audience. I can't tell, there's so many people here. Oliver De La Paz, wonderful poet, and also Brendan Constantine, Deborah Taffa, and Martha Rhodes. So they'll all be reading, and it's going to be not just not just a regular reading, but a reading in the round. So one person will start off reading one thing, and then the next person has to suddenly shuffle through their stuff and find something to read, and it's just going to be fun and exciting, and I hope you can all attend. So speaking of 24 Pearl Street, these two fine writers here have worked with me there, and they're also teaching this summer at the Fine Arts Work Center summer program, so you can look up their classes online. And I decided for the questioning for our poets here that I would utilize the titles and the descriptions of their Fine Arts Work Center workshop to ask them some questions, some probing questions. So to start off, glasses would help. So I wanted just to ask you, Kimiko, your workshop is called Capturing the Hybrid Text. And you talked a little bit about the hybrid text. We were in a panel together earlier, The State of Poetry, and she mentioned the hybrid text. But in your description, you use the chimera as a metaphor for hybrid texts. And I just wanted to know, can you talk a little bit about the idea of the chimera? Does it appear in your work or process, or do you have something to say about that for writing processes in general?
Well, can you hear me? No, I really did it. Here, okay. Maybe mine needs a battery. Chimera. Well, first of all, I feel I am one. And if you're in this room listening to poetry, you probably are one too. So there. We're all made up of different parts of creatures, and we're all kind of mythological beings. So I would say yes. I do use it in my work because I am one. And I increasingly, over the decades, use hybrid texts. So by that I mean different genres in one text, or use pictures, different media in a single text. It's important to be playful.
Definitely. Oh, let's see, is that working now? Okay. So we're going to do the trading thing. So Matthew, I also wanted to ask you about something coming out of your description of your FOC workshop for this summer. Your workshop is called Strangeness, Curiosities, and Defamiliarization. And I just was struck by that last word, defamiliarization. I just want to know, can you explain that, what you mean by that? I mean, I know what the word means, we all do, but what do you mean by it when you're talking about the writing process?
Can you hear me? This thing's working okay, we're good. I think it's, so the original idea comes from a Russian fiction writer and poet and critic about 100-some years ago, and the idea of defamiliarization, or what we translate to mean defamiliarization, was, the original idea was that he was saying that you could, in your life you can't pay attention to everything around you all the time 100%, it's impossible, and so mostly most of the things you have available to perceive, you're sort of, you're kind of moving past them in a kind of autopilot mode. We fall into routines and patterns, and the danger of this, the idea is that things that are truly beautiful or wonderful we will take for granted, and things that are truly terrible we might say, oh, that's just how things are. It's so and the idea behind it was that art is a thing that makes us not do that. It shows you what was right in front of you, but it shows it to you in a different way, so you have to pay attention to it. And that's one of the things that I've been drawn to, I think, as a reader of poems. A lot of the poems that I've really admired over the years, or right now, are poems that show me something that I could have seen, but they show it to me in a slightly different way, and I see it sort of anew.
I like that. Regarding what you both said, you talked about play, and you're talking about seeing things in a new way. I mean, that's definitely what we want out of ourselves as writers, but also out of what we read and listen to. You know, we want that playfulness, that newness, so I'm glad you both touched on that. So all of you will have the opportunity to pick up their books afterwards, and I definitely encourage you to do so. The books that they read from were just amazing. Like really, I told Kimiko earlier, I didn't get to tell you, but just really, they're just awesome works that just sunk right in to my roots. They're still kind of, I'm digesting them, both. One thing I noticed was that you both use repetition in a unique way, like as a hook. It's a device, we all know this, repetition, but I felt for both of you that you're kind of transcending this use of repetition, and I'm glad you read Bruce Wayne, because I want you to talk about the repetition there, and then also you read Foreign Bodies, the title poem for your book. Also with the Badger, Bad Girl, like that repetition. Can you both speak to, first, I guess start with Kimiko, to that use of repetition, if you were aware of your transcending that device?
Well, repetition is part of who we are. It's our heartbeat, right? So repetition is literally who we are. Keeps us alive. Repetition in art, especially when it's strictly repeated, creates an expectation. You're going to keep hearing the same thing over and over again. When you deviate a little bit from that, that brings surprise, delight, playfulness. So if I say badger, 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 and then I move over to what I'm really thinking, bad girl, bad, bad girl, girl, then it's something happens to the earlier repetition. It becomes a different kind of focus. I actually teach about repetition, so I could lecture on this, but I won't, don't worry.
I guess I like it as a sort of musical instrument to the, I think I'm mostly just talking in my poems, and it's a way that I can provide some sort of sonic structure to them, because I think I like listening to poems aloud, and but I also feel I'm drawn to it for the potential ability to connect disparate parts of the poem. Mm-hmm. When you have a familiar thing resurfacing in a different way, and as you were saying, like the ability to create a pattern which creates expectation. Often the pattern is interesting for the variation.
Thank you both. I just realized when you were both speaking that these are really nerdy questions, and I'm so happy that you're indulging these very nerdy questions. But I want to broaden things a little bit too. And I was thinking of this next one based on the fact that in your book, Matthew, you are writing epistolary poems, letters, But I'm wondering, who do you write to? Like, is it, letter to Bruce Wayne, but I don't know if you're actually writing to Bruce Wayne, the comic book here, but who in general even do you write to? And then Kimiko, if you can follow up. Well, I guess you can go first. Yeah.
I
just realized we're doing the trading.
Oh, who do I write to?
Yeah.
I think to some extent I'm talking to myself. I've never been able to answer that question, actually. Sometimes I do write very specifically. Sometimes I think, why didn't I say that to my father? Like, oh, I'm going to write in a poem. Or my mother or some other person, to daughters, granddaughters. But I think overall I'm kind of thinking out loud, something like that.
Okay.
I think it changes a little bit from poem to poem, and depending on the context from which I'm writing. The only person I actually know that's going to read anything I write is my partner, who's also a poet, Vivi Francis. Often I will show her, like, she unfortunately has to read a lot of early drafts of mine when I'm really excited about it. which is usually when I've just finished writing something, and which is not necessarily when it's at its best. But and then she won't see many drafts until until she's like, oh, that's what you did with it, years later when she sees. But often when I'm most excited about it, like when I've just finished writing, I feel like really triumphant. I'll be like, can you read this or listen to this? And so she's the often the first audience. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't always know who. I think it's. I feel like writing a poem is a lot like that person who's stranded on an island and they stuff a message into a bottle and you throw it in the ocean. Like you have no idea where that's going to end up, if it's going to end up across the seas or like next door, or if it's going to be read by someone next week or years from now. Once the poem leaves you, it kind of develops its own social life if you're lucky. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I like that. Well, I just have one more question, and before I ask it, just thank you all for being wonderfully nerdy along with us and getting into all this. Yeah, it's been a great day, and tomorrow the festival will continue. But the last question I have for both of you is, what do you think the next innovation in poetic form or topic is? It's a bit of an obsession of mine, like the next thing coming up, your ideas. And first, Kimiko.
Hybrid text, more of it. Well, and hybrid text also, someone was mentioning on our panel this afternoon, visual poems, so video poems. I'm super envious of Nick Flynn, who did a poem with a comic book artist, Josh Neufeld. Oh, I'm so jealous. So I think that there are just different platforms, different ways. When I was coming up, I was a hippie, and hippies didn't write in form. It's too bourgeois. But now, what am I doing? I'm writing in form. So I think it evolves. I don't know what is going to be the next big thing. I think that we'll find different ways to involve form, whether it's recognizable or not. So whatever it is, I think repetition will inform it.
All right, so I knew this question was coming, and I still don't have a fully formed answer. But I don't know what the next new thing will be or the next innovation will be. So I'll just say I'll just talk about what makes poetry feel new to me. And I think it's because poetry, I mean, it's been around forever and in all kinds of languages, and sometimes it feels like, oh, there's nothing new. Like we've been writing elegies and love poems and odes since at least like 10 or 15 years, and there's and what makes these subjects feel new, even though they've been around for centuries. I think it's just the new perspectives. Like when you're while anyone can write a love poem or anyone can write an elegy, and the tools are basically the same. It's language. It's the things that make a poem feel new. Is like it has a different perspective laid over it. So it's like your individual body of experiences and your worldview if you're a writer, and the images that you've grown up seeing, and like that combination of things is something that no other writer has access to. So when you put that perspective over this sort of timeless form or mode, it has potential to create something fresh. So.
That's an awesome answer. That's awesome. But we're at the end. I feel like I'm running a game show here, asking you, quizzing you. But in any case, thank you so much, and give them another round of applause, everybody. So, thank you Feel free to buy books in the back and have those signs up here. Thank you all.
Hi there. Before you go, you know how in church they pass the buckets around, the baskets? I'm Daniel Johnson, Mass Poetry's Executive Director. We are so grateful to have all of you here. A quick anecdote. At my table, in my family, I have kids who are 10, 9, and 4, and we oftentimes do like a chills and thrills things about your day, like how was your day, what were your chills, what were your thrills. This festival, there have been so many thrills. I'm going to share a chill, which was, at one point I had like 50 chairs on a dolly, and I was headed down to like Poets and Pets, and the thing wasn't lashed all that well. You know how they're the cobblestones and the brick streets, and this thing started to roll, and then it started to roll a little bit faster, and I kind of got in front of it, but then it started to kind of do this, and then all of a sudden, someone in a blue shirt popped up beside me, a volunteer, poet on my left. We slowed that thing. I think it's kind of a metaphor for managing a small arts nonprofit at this stage in a pandemic, right? Sometimes shit gets a little bit wild, and I just want to say we appreciate all of your support. I want to give a massive thank you to the Mass Poetry team and board. The 10,000 Slack messages have been flying back and forth. We spent a year planning this festival. We will be back in Salem on the ground in 2025. To date, we've raised $90,000. We have $15,000 left to raise to cover all of our costs. We run year-round programming, including poetry residencies in a dozen partner schools, a teen spoken word program at the new Center for Creative Writing. So when we ask for support, we're asking for you to pay our poets. We're asking you to pay so we can offer teen spoken word programming. So when the buckets come around, you've got envelopes, there are QR codes on there. We take cash, credit card, Bitcoin, whatever you want to give us, stocks. And MP Carver is going to give a quick thanks. So thank you all. Thank you, Matthew, Kimiko, Jennifer, John. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Oh, you're almost free.